Archaeologists have determined that over a time of 18 years, the builders scooped out over 400,000 tons of rock. They worked for 24 hours a day, 0.5 tons of rock per hour. Who does that? We can't do that today.
How did ancient builders haul massive stones without machinery, or leave behind structures with no written records?
There are enormous structures underneath the Great Pyramid that go kilometers with coils. They don't understand what it is.
Over thousands of years, cultures have risen and vanished, leaving only ruins. Imagine monuments so ingenious they stump today's experts. From a fragment of Stonehenge dragged from northeast Scotland to carvings whose meanings remain hidden, and from Peru's baffling glyphs to Mexico's intricate rock carvings, these sites hold deep, incredible secrets that keep us guessing. Now, let's explore. Number 15. Stonehenge, England. Ever stand before a ring of giant stones and wonder who planned it all? That's Stonehenge for you. Sitting out on the wide Salisbury Plain in England, it draws more than 1 million visitors each year. Around 2500 BCE, people began hauling in massive stones, some over 13 feet tall and weighing up to 25 tons, to set up this circular wonder. Most stones are local Sarsen sandstone, but the smaller blue stones came all the way from Wales, roughly 200 miles away. Think about that. No trucks, no cranes, just clever minds and a lot of muscle. Why build it? No one knows for sure. Maybe it was a sacred spot for sun and moon ceremonies, or perhaps a giant calendar to mark solstices and equinoxes. Some scholars believe it was a kind of ancient hospital, a place where people came hoping for healing. Others see it as a tomb site, since burials in nearby barrows held chiefs and priests. Whatever the real reason, its stones line up with sunrise on the summer solstice and sunset on the winter solstice, so the sun definitely mattered. Dig around the turf today, and you'll still find bits of pottery, tools, and ancient campfires. Each digging season peels back another layer of mystery, showing just how skilled these early engineers were. They quarried, shaped, and moved these giant rocks using wooden sledges, ropes, and sheer determination. As the morning light hits those stones, it's easy to feel a spark of connection to the people who stood here thousands of years ago. Their voices are silent, but these stones keep their story alive. Stonehenge remains a powerful reminder that even in a world without our modern gadgets, humans dreamed big and built even bigger. Number 14. Chaco Canyon, United States. Imagine a desert valley turning into a buzzing neighborhood more than 1,000 years ago. That's Chaco Canyon in the American Southwest. From around 850 to 1150 CE, ancestral Pueblo peoples laid out a city of stone buildings called Great Houses. These weren't tiny huts. Take Pueblo Bonito, for example. It had over 600 rooms and about 40 round kivas, spaces where people gathered for ceremonies. Walk through the canyon today and you'll see the footprint of places like Chetro Kettle and Una Vida. Each block of stone was cut and set by hand. The walls line up with sunrises on the solstice and moonrises on major lunar cycles. One famous spot, the Sun Dagger, channels a beam of light through a rock split right onto a spiral carving, showing exactly when the seasons change. Clearly, the builders knew their skies. Trade routes ran like spider webs from Chaco to the coasts and mountain valleys. Archaeologists find seashells from the Pacific, copper bells from Mexico, and piles of turquoise. Imagine merchants and travelers meeting here, swapping goods and trading stories. By 1150 CE, life changed. Maybe drought hit, or farmland wore out. People packed up and left. Today, Chaco Canyon is a National Historical Park and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Hike its trails, and you'll follow in the steps of those ancient architects. Their massive walls and precise alignments still hold the power to surprise you, reminding us that long ago, people without computers mapped the sky and built a city tuned to the rhythms of the sun and moon. Number 13. The holy city of Teotihuacan, Mexico. 50 kilometers northeast of today's Mexico City lies Teotihuacan, a vast cityscape laid out with surprising precision between the 1st and 7th centuries AD. At its heart, the broad Avenue of the Dead cuts north to south, guiding the eye from the Pyramid of the Moon at one end to the larger Pyramid of the Sun at the other. Flanking the avenue, the Feathered Serpent Pyramid, or the Temple of Quetzalcoatl, dazzles with talud tablero panels and carved stone heads spewing water as if inviting onlookers into realms of gods and rulers. At its peak, Teotihuacan spanned 36 square kilometers, home to perhaps 125,000 people. Its grid-style streets and multi-room apartment compounds, like those at Tetitla and Zacuala, reflect an advanced sense of urban planning. Water from the nearby San Juan River was channeled through canals and reservoirs, feeding gardens and public baths. Vibrant murals inside palaces and temples depicted jaguars, hummingbirds, and ceremonial scenes, hinting at beliefs that blended nature, astronomy, and social order. Archaeologists suggest the city's builders mapped the cosmos onto its streets, aligning it with solar events and cardinal directions. During the equinoxes, sunlight would strike the eastern side of the Pyramid of the Sun in perfect harmony. Trade networks stretched from the Gulf Coast to the Maya regions, bringing obsidian, pottery, and exotic feathers, signs that Teotihuacan shaped Mesoamerican culture far beyond its walls. By the 7th century, fire had damaged many structures, and the city was abandoned. Yet its legacy endured. Aztec rulers later revered Teotihuacan as the birthplace of gods, weaving its monuments into their own myths. Today, even in ruin, Teotihuacan impresses with its grand scale and the unanswered question, who were these people, and how did they build such a masterpiece with no written record to guide us? Number 12. The Palpa Glyphs, Peru. Stretching across the sun-baked slopes near Peru's Rio Grande, the Palpa Glyphs are a lesser-known cousin of the famous Nazca lines. Carved into hillsides between roughly 200 BCE and 600 CE by the Paracas and early Nazca people, these designs aren't just plain doodles. They rise and fall with the natural curves of the land, making them visible not only to someone perched on a nearby ridge, but even, legend says, to travelers in small reed boats on the river below. Instead of the giant hummingbirds and spiders you see on the Nazca Plain, Palpa boasts more human-shaped figures. One scene shows a group of stick-figure people holding staffs and round objects, as if they're gathered for a special ritual. Some scholars think these gatherings marked solstices or other sky events. Imagine ancient astronomers pointing to constellations and marking time with big hilltop drawings. The famous Starman stands out, a stick-figure person with arms outstretched, legs splayed, and a round head that some suggest echoes a shining star or even the full moon. Nobody knows exactly who he represents, a god, a mythic hero, or simply a marker for a seasonal ceremony. What's clear is that carving such a precise image into a steep slope would have needed careful planning, ropes, and maybe simple wooden frames to guide the lines downhill. What really grabs attention is that recent studies hint these glyphs could be older than the Nazca lines by centuries. If true, it means the Paracas people first tapped into this giant-scale art form before their culture blended into the Nazca world. Modern technology, drones, 3D maps, even ground-penetrating radar is helping researchers piece together the full picture. Yet, after centuries buried in desert dust, the Palpa glyphs still keep their biggest secret: why these ancient hands went to such effort, rising above the sands to leave a message for anyone or anything looking down from the sky. Number 11. Angkor, Cambodia. Once the beating heart of the Khmer Empire, the ancient city of Angkor sprawls over more than 400 square kilometers in northwest Cambodia. Its most famous gem, Angkor Wat, crowns the site with 5 soaring towers shaped like lotus buds. Built in the early 1100s under King Suryavarman II, it was designed to mirror Mount Meru, the mythic home of Hindu gods, and to track the sun's path on spring and autumn equinoxes. But Angkor Wat is just the start. Nearby, the Bayon Temple greets you with more than 200 carved faces, stoic, smiling, and ever watchful, peering down from its terraces. Taprom feels like a scene from an adventure film. Giant silk cotton trees wrap their roots around crumbling walls, as if nature is gently reminding us who's really in charge. Life in medieval Angkor centered on clever waterworks. Vast reservoirs called barays held rainwater, feeding rice paddies through a network of canals. At its peak, Angkor may have been the largest pre-industrial city on Earth, bustling with farmers, artisans, priests, and traders. Yet by the mid-1400s, shifting river paths, resource strains, and political struggles led to its gradual abandonment. For centuries, local Khmer people treated the crumbling ruins as sacred forests until 19th century explorers reintroduced Angkor to the wider world. Today, a sunrise visit at Angkor Wat, watching golden light creep over its reflection pool, is practically a rite of passage for travelers. Number 10. Gantija, Malta. Perched on a gentle hill overlooking Gozo's green fields, Gantija feels like stepping into a giant's playground. Built between 3600 and 3200 BCE, these twin temples predate even Stonehenge by centuries. Locals call them Gaunt, or giants, because only creatures of enormous strength could have hauled those multi-ton limestone blocks into place, especially without wheels or metal tools. Walk inside, and the air takes on a hush. The main chamber unfolds like 3 connected half-circles, each once roofed with massive slabs that have long since fallen. Sunlight spills through the entrance, lighting up worn grooves in the floor where priests may have dragged altars or carved offerings. You can almost hear the low hum of chanting, imagining farmers and shepherds gathering for rituals tied to the phases of the moon and the turning of the seasons. Recent digs have turned up bowls, animal bones, and seashells, tiny scraps that hint at feasts and ceremonies dedicated to fertility and life cycles. One odd find, a set of copper pins, hinting that the builders traded not just within Malta, but reached out to Sicily and beyond. Even the walls bear secrets. Weathered red ochre traces suggest they once glowed with color. Modern engineers still puzzle over how Neolithic hands carved blocks so precisely. Some stones shine smooth where ancient chisels must have worked in perfect lines. Others balance at impossible angles, a silent show of confidence in structural know-how. Today, Gantija stands protected behind a low stone fence, but you can wander almost up to its moss-soft walls. Guides point out how the setting sun aligns with doorways twice a year, casting long shadows that touch the inner altar. Number 9. Great Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe. Tucked away among rolling hills studded with baobab trees, Great Zimbabwe is a stone city born of human ambition. From the 14th to the 15th century, its builders, unknown by name, heaped up granite boulders to erect walls that soar more than 10 meters high. No mortar holds those walls together. Gravity and careful shaping do the work. Split into 3 zones, the site thrummed with life. On the hill complex, chieftains lived in circular huts atop a rocky outcrop, gazing down on the valley below. The great enclosure boasts the largest ancient structure in sub-Saharan Africa, a swirling horseshoe wall that encloses mysterious conical towers. Down in the valley complex, common folk tended livestock, mixed pottery, and traded with vendors arriving from as far away as Kilwa on the Swahili coast. Artifacts whisper of trade networks stretching across the Indian Ocean. Glass beads from Persia, Chinese porcelain shards, and Arab coins found at the foot of the hill point to a city plugged into world markets. Gold dust and ivory flowed out, while imported luxuries flowed in, fattening the city's coffers and fueling its fame. Decline came gradually. Around 1450 CE, farmland wore out, and crowded streets grew unclean. Wells clogged, crops withered, and people drifted away. By the time Portuguese mariners skirted the coast in the 16th century, the stones stood silent. For centuries, colonial myths tried to pin the ruins on Phoenicians or Queen Sheba. It wasn't until early 20th century digs that scholars proved local hands built this marvel. Today, the Zimbabwe bird, carved in smooth soapstone and once perched on palace walls, flutters on the national flag, a reminder of a kingdom no map once marked, but whose stones still whisper tales of power, wealth, and mystery. Number 8. The Longyu Caves, China. Imagine uncovering an underground labyrinth carved by hands lost to time. That's exactly what happened in 1992, when farmers in Zhejiang province drained 5 ponds and revealed the entrances to the Longyu Caves. Tucked beneath rice paddies and temples, 24 caverns stretch across more than 300,000 square feet, each hewn with flat walls, right-angled corners, and ceilings lined with parallel chisel marks. Dating them is tricky, but experts lean toward more than 2,000 years old, possibly from the Qin or early Han dynasties. Yet there's no mention of them in any text. Why carve out so many huge chambers and leave no scrolls, no pottery fragments, no paintings? The silence is part of their draw. Step inside, and you feel swallowed by stone. Even 2 millennia later, the sandstone stands firm, untouched by water or cave-ins. The floors are sometimes submerged, leaving a glossy mirror that reflects the grid-like ceiling marks. Echoes bounce endlessly, turning a lone voice into a chorus. Some speculate they were giant water storage pools. Others say they sheltered warriors or honored ancestors. One recent study found that the cave's dimensions are almost identical, as if an ancient blueprint guided every cut. Even the angles match within fractions of a degree. Today, you can visit via narrow walkways and string-light lanterns that cast dancing shadows across the walls. Tour guides remind visitors not to touch the stone. Oils from our skin could eat away at the ancient carvings. Number 7. The Callanish Stones, Scotland. Windsweepers say the Callanish stones feel alive. On the Isle of Lewis, a circle of 13 towering stones stands guard over peat bogs and rolling hills. These rough-hewn, nice pillars were set in place around 3000 BCE, long before written history, and have watched centuries slip by in silence. At the heart, a massive central monolith looms like a silent sentinel. From it, 4 arms of stones stretch north, south, east, and west, carving out a cross in the landscape. To the north, a straight avenue of stones leads the eye toward the horizon, as if pointing to some lost secret. Local tales whisper that on clear nights, the moon slip lines up perfectly in that northern corridor, bathing the stones in a pale glow. Some believe the site marked lunar standstill events, rare moments every 18.6 years when the moon reaches its extreme southern point. Others say ancient rituals drew the community here to celebrate harvests or mark the turning of seasons. Excavations have found traces of wooden platforms and hearths, hinting at feasts or gatherings under starlit skies. Over 50 stones still stand, some topping 15 feet high, their weathered faces etched by wind and rain. In winter, a blanket of snow makes them look like ghostly giants. In summer, sunsets cast long shadows that shift until stars prick the sky. Nearby burial cairns and the remains of Neolithic huts remind visitors that this wasn't just a gathering spot, but a home for families who toiled and celebrated here. When 19th century farmers drained fields and cut turf, the stones emerged from centuries of peat cover. Number 6. The Kailasa Temple, India. Nestled deep in the Ellora hills of Maharashtra, the Kailasa temple looks like a giant sculpture popped out of solid rock. Carved in the 8th century under King Krishna I in AD 760, it wasn't built brick by brick, but carved from the top down, a single massive task of removing over 200,000 tons of volcanic basalt. The result? A soaring shrine dedicated to Lord Shiva, rising some 108 feet tall with terraces, courtyards, and ornate pillars, all hewn from the same stone. Walk in, and you'll spot the main courtyard, flanked by smaller shrines and winding corridors lined with statues. The central spire mimics Mount Kailash, Shiva's mythical home, while a dramatic carving shows Ravana trying to shake the mountain, proof that legends shaped every corner. You'll also find reliefs of Vishnu, Lakshmi, dancing apsaras, and animals like elephants and lions, each telling stories of faith and folklore. Legends say it took 18 years and thousands of workers to finish. Others credit divine help. Whatever the truth, the result is jaw-dropping. Giant pillared halls where sunlight filters through carved openings, casting patterns that shift through the day. Water channels once ran around the temple, reflecting its image in shallow pools, a precursor to modern fountains. Though mostly dedicated to Shiva, the temple blends Shaiva, Vaishnava, and folk traditions, showcasing an inclusive spirit. Beyond the main shrine, rock-cut caves house Buddhist and Jain carvings, making Ellora a true melting pot of ancient beliefs. Today, visitors trace the same steps as pilgrims did over 1,000 years ago, marveling at how a single chunk of mountain turned into a living story in stone. Now it's time for today's subscriber pick. Ancient civilizations etched their legacy in stone, leaving behind wonders that still boggle experts. Mysterious buildings built by unknown cultures continue to amaze archaeologists and scientists alike, prompting endless questions about their creators' skills and purposes. Imagine approaching the Elephanta caves, their weathered gateways gently opening to chambers carved into volcanic rock, where figures of Hindu deities loom overhead. Flickering torchlight dances across intricate reliefs, revealing scenes of gods, elephants, and cosmic battles. As researchers probe hidden passageways and map subterranean halls, each discovery deepens the mystery, reminding us that the past holds secrets we have yet to fully comprehend. Number 5. Puma Punku, Bolivia. Perched high on the Altiplano, Puma Punku, which means Door of the Puma, still jolts the mind with its strange precision-cut blocks. You'll first notice huge stone slabs, some tipping the scale at over 100 tons, hewn so flat and sharp-edged that even modern tools struggle to match their smoothness. How did ancient hands carve perfect right angles into hard andesite and red sandstone, then wrestle those behemoths into place, some more than a mile from the quarry? That puzzle fuels wild theories, from super-advanced lost cultures to visitors from other worlds. The heart of Puma Punku sits within the larger Tiwanaku complex, whose builders flourished between roughly 400 and 600 AD, though an early 20th century researcher, Arthur Posnansky, famously argued for dates as far back as 13,000 BC. Radiocarbon tests by William Isbell later pushed the timeline forward, yet debate still rages. What's not up for debate is the site's astronomical flair. Massive stone platforms and doors that line up not just with sunrise on solstices and equinoxes, but with stars that shone over these plains 17,000 years ago. Walking among the scattered blocks today, visitors spot not just giant slabs, but finely bored holes and L-shaped fittings, evidence of an intricate plumbing or structural system that no one has fully decoded. Below the ruins, ground-penetrating radar has hinted at buried corridors and hidden chambers, suggesting layers of activity lost to time. Nearby, terraced fields and sunken compounds point to a once bustling city, where water flowed through canals and crops clung to steep slopes. Number 4. Sigiriya, Sri Lanka. Rising like a watchful guardian over emerald plains, Sigiriya, Lion Rock, jumps out at you from more than 650 feet above the ground. Built in the 5th century by King Kashyapa I, it started life as a bold statement. A fortress palace carved into the granite heart of a lonely rock. Legend says Kashyapa, having seized the throne by overthrowing his father, feared his own half-brother, Moggallana. He chose Sigiriya as a safe haven, surrounding its peak with moats, walls, and gardens, so elaborate they still thrill visitors today. The winding staircases lead through the Lion's Gate, where 2 giant paws remain from a once mighty stone lion that guarded the path. Beyond, terraced gardens play with levels and water in ways that feel almost modern. Fountains that still dance when the wind blows just right, pools that mirror the sky, and winding channels that feed lily-lined ponds. These water gardens may be the oldest surviving hydrological system in the world, showing that 1,500 years ago, engineers here mastered water's playfulness. Midway up the rock, a sheltered gallery holds the famous Sigiriya maidens, frescoes of graceful women draped in jewels and painted in bright reds and greens. Time and climate have faded them, but the outlines and brushstrokes still shimmer with life. Below them, the mirror wall once polished so finely that courtiers could see their reflections. Today, it's covered in ancient graffiti, poems, warnings, flirty verses, left by travelers over the centuries. At the summit, you'll find the foundations of a royal palace, storage rooms, and a throne carved from rock. From this dizzying height, the view sweeps across dense forest and farmland, a vivid reminder of why a king would stake everything to sit so close to the sky. Sigiriya isn't just a ruin. It's a theatrical blend of power, art, and nature aimed at impressing friends and scaring foes. Even now, it whispers tales of ambition, refuge, and the timeless human urge to leave a mark on the world. Number 3. Nabta Playa, Egypt. Long before the pyramids rose on the Nile's banks, a quiet desert basin in southern Egypt was pulsing with life. Nabta Playa, now a bone-dry stretch of sand, once hosted seasonal lakes where cattle grazed and people gathered between 10,000 and 8,000 years ago. Among the sun-bleached sands lie upright stones arranged in circles and alignments, so exact that they likely pointed to sunrise at the summer solstice or to bright stars marking the flood season. Walk the stone circle today, and you'll imagine Neolithic herders hauling massive granite megaliths into place, each carefully slotted into sockets carved in bedrock. The main circle is flanked by stone pairs that align with the rising of Sirius and the Orion Belt, stars whose arrivals signaled life-giving rains. This wasn't idle decoration. It was a working calendar, vital for a community planning planting, herding, and ceremonies. Bones from cattle burials, some adorned with beads or placed in special pits, speak to the deep respect these people had for their herds. Cows weren't just food, they were symbols of wealth, fertility, and even spiritual guides. As Nabta's shores rolled back and forth with wet and dry phases, this community pushed the boundaries of herding and early agriculture, laying the groundwork for the mighty civilizations that bloomed along the Nile. Nearby, hearths and stone huts hint at everyday life. Children playing by firelight, women grinding seeds on flat stones, and men crafting pottery. Yet the stone circles stand apart, a collective gaze turned skyward. Modern surveys have uncovered remnants of buried pathways and hidden chambers beneath the surface, signs that rituals here were as layered as the sands. Nabta Playa may look empty now, but each boulder, each buried trench, and each cattle bone echoes with the heartbeat of early Egyptians. Number 2. The Steppe Geoglyphs, Kazakhstan. Out on the windswept plains of northern Kazakhstan, something enormous and ancient lies quietly in the dirt, so massive you'd never notice it unless you were flying over it. That's exactly how these giant symbols were discovered. In 2007, A Kazakh economist named Dmitry Day was casually browsing satellite images when he spotted strange patterns in the Turgai steppe. What he had stumbled upon would soon become one of the most baffling archaeological mysteries in Central Asia, the steppe geoglyphs. More than 50 massive earthworks dot the land here, stretching over an area of nearly 300 square miles. We're talking about circles, squares, lines, and even swastikas, an ancient symbol that predates its modern misuse and once represented the sun and eternity in many cultures. The largest of these shapes is longer than 3 football fields per side. And the kicker? They were invisible to us until satellites pointed them out. No one really knows why they were built. Some archaeologists believe these giant markings had religious significance, perhaps created for rituals connected to celestial events. Others think they could have been territorial signs or early forms of communication across tribes. What's even more intriguing is how people thousands of years ago managed to organize such huge projects without modern tools or written language. Built from dirt, stone, and wood, these geoglyphs required incredible planning and community effort. There's still no definitive answer as to who created them or why. NASA even joined in, snapping high-resolution images to help researchers piece the puzzle together. Number 1. The underground city of Derinkuyu, Turkey. Imagine knocking down a basement wall and finding a staircase that keeps going and going. That's how Derinkuyu, the astonishing underground city in Turkey, was rediscovered. One man renovating his home in the 1960s found a passage that led into a forgotten world, carved deep into the volcanic rock beneath Cappadocia. This isn't some cramped tunnel. Derinkuyu dives more than 200 feet underground and could shelter up to 20,000 people. Entire communities lived here, with rooms for food storage, schools, chapels, kitchens, stables, and living quarters. There were even wine cellars and tombs. And here's the twist: no one's entirely sure who built it. The leading theory is that the Phrygians, an ancient Indo-European people, began construction around the 8th century BCE. Later, the Byzantine Christians expanded it, using it as a refuge from invading forces like Arab raiders. They weren't just hiding, they were thriving. The city had an advanced ventilation system, with air shafts running more than 160 feet deep to keep everything breathable. These shafts also served as communication routes between different levels. Defensive design was top tier too. Narrow passageways forced invaders to move single file, and enormous circular stone doors could roll into place to block entries. These stones were so heavy that they could only be moved from the inside. Despite centuries of conflict above ground, there's no evidence Derinkuyu was ever successfully attacked. What makes this city even more mysterious is how little we know about its earliest inhabitants. No written records, no inscriptions, just a vast, perfectly engineered underground labyrinth carved by people whose names and stories have been lost to time.